Before we begin the story, if you enjoy cinematic tales of humans defying impossible odds, make sure to like this video, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of humanity's fight to prove itself among the stars. Now, let's step into the Tribunal chamber, where one human faces judgment before the galaxy. The vaulted chamber was vast enough to swallow a mountain whole, its walls shimmering with etched constellations that seemed to drift as though alive. From the circular tiers above, dozens of alien species watched in expectant silence, their gazes piercing, predatory, some curious, some openly mocking. At the heart of the chamber, beneath the focused glare of the Tribunal's central light, stood Captain Elias Vare of Earth. He had not been bound in chains, though the absence of restraints felt more humiliating than liberating. The Tribunal had not feared he would fight or flee. To them he was already classified, harmless, soft-skinned, unworthy of defiance. His presence was a formality, a final performance before the decree that would strip humanity of all claims to dignity among the stars. Captain Elias Vare, intoned the Speaker of the Tribunal, a towering figure of sinew and bone plates whose mandibles clicked with deliberate cruelty. You stand as the last voice of your species. The evidence has been presented. The conclusion unanimous. Humanity is hereby designated as prey. The word carried weight in this place. Prey was not just classification, it was condemnation. It meant subjugation, exile, and the right of any predator species to hunt or enslave without recourse. Elias met the speaker's gaze without flinching. His shoulders were squared, his jaw tight, though the faint bruises from his arrest still marked his face. His military uniform, stripped of insignia, hung torn from prior scuffles, yet his presence radiated an unyielding calm. Gasps and guttural chuckles rippled through the chamber tiers. Some delegates leaned forward, relishing the verdict. Others smirked, baring fangs or mandibles, reveling in the spectacle of humiliation. One figure, however, did not join the chorus of contempt. Seated among the scholarly observers, Kalen Drass, a lean-scaled alien of the Veari, tilted his head with quiet curiosity. His kind were not apex predators but archivists of history, neutral to the feuds of Claw and Fong. He had studied countless tribunals and witnessed prey broken under such pronouncements, their spirits shattered. Yet the human's eyes held something else. Not fear. Not defeat. Something that unsettled Kalen, though he could not yet name it. The speaker spread his 4 arms, a ceremonial gesture. Humanity's place is clear. Fragile bones, thin skin, dull teeth. No armor, no natural weapons. A prey species that has survived thus far only by accident of geography and isolation. Against the predators of the galaxy, you are nothing. A roar of approval echoed from predator delegates, their bodies shifting with anticipation. Elias let the words hang before he answered, his voice calm but edged with steel. You mistake survival for weakness. Humanity has endured not because we are spared the hunt, but because we faced it every day on a world that tried to kill us. Our history is not measured by fragility but by persistence. The silence that followed was not respect, it was surprise at his audacity. Then came the laughter, guttural and cruel, rising like waves from the chamber tiers. Elias stood unmoved, his gaze fixed not on the speaker but on the galaxy beyond these walls, as though speaking to an audience that extended far past the Tribunal. Kalen narrowed his eyes. He knew that humans were new to the galactic stage, their histories mostly dismissed, their biology mocked. Yet something in the cadence of Elias's words reminded him of records from ancient predator kings, those who spoke not from desperation but from a place of inner certainty. The speaker's mandibles clicked again, sharp as breaking bone. Defiance changes nothing. The decree is passed. Humanity shall be stripped of rights. And you, Elias Vare, shall serve as the exemplar. You will be cast into the verdant crucible. A world of true predators. You will be hunted, and in your death the galaxy shall see the truth of your kind. The chamber roared approval once more. Some slammed clawed hands against the railing. Others hissed or growled, eager for the spectacle. Elias's lips tightened, but he said nothing. No plea, no protest, no curse. His silence was not surrender, it was something colder, sharper. The speaker's eyes narrowed as though sensing the unspoken challenge. Kalen felt a ripple along his frill. For reasons he could not explain, the pronouncement felt less like an execution and more like the opening of something far greater. He leaned forward, watching the human carefully as though trying to glimpse what others could not. Guards approached, towering reptilian wardens clad in ceremonial armor. Their claws rested on energy pikes as they gestured for Elias to step forward. He obeyed without hesitation, his stride measured, steady. Even stripped of weapons, even under the weight of 1,000 watching eyes, he carried himself not as prey led to slaughter but as a soldier marching toward a battlefield. The light of the tribunal dimmed, signaling the end of judgment. The chamber descended into noise, predator voices arguing over wagers, predictions of how quickly the human would fall, which predator would claim the kill. Yet through the cacophony, Kalen caught a single thread of silence. Elias's expression as he was escorted out. No fear. No bitterness. Only a stillness that unsettled even the guards flanking him. When the chamber doors sealed, Kalen exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he held. For all the tribunal's pomp, something had shifted in that room. Perhaps it was nothing more than the stubbornness of a condemned man. Yet Kalen could not shake the feeling that history would remember this moment. The tribunal had declared the human prey. But the human himself had refused to look like prey. Beyond the chamber walls, engines stirred, preparing the transport that would cast Elias down onto the verdant crucible. Somewhere in that untamed wilderness, predators sharpened their instincts, waiting for the feast. But as the stars shifted beyond the viewports, a different question began to whisper through Kalen's mind. When predators circled this human, who would truly be the hunted? The verdict had been spoken. The exile was set. And yet, for the first time in the tribunal's long memory, uncertainty lingered in the air, as though even the predators themselves sensed that the story was not finished. Elias Vare did not glance back as the transport bay doors sealed behind him. His eyes were fixed forward, toward the unknown, his jaw set with a quiet resolve that promised something the tribunal had not accounted for. The chamber above roared in victory. But Kalen knew better. The sound was not triumph, it was the first crack in the certainty of predators. And in that crack, something dangerous was beginning to take root. The descent burned like judgment itself, the transport's hull shuddering as it cut through the atmosphere of the verdant crucible. Inside the containment pod, Elias Vare sat strapped into a crude harness, the last faint tremors of the tribunal's chamber still echoing in his ears. He did not pray. He did not curse. He watched the flickering status lights as the ship rattled, his expression unreadable. As though the violence outside mirrored something he had already endured within. When the pod slammed into the earth, the impact rattled his bones and filled his lungs with dust. Silence followed, broken only by the faint crackle of cooling metal. Elias unlatched the restraints, shoved open the warped hatch, and stepped into a world that reeked of danger. The air was thick and humid, carrying the pungent scent of overgrown vegetation and the sharper undertone of predator musk. Towering trees loomed, their bark glossy with sap, vines hanging like traps woven by unseen hands. Shafts of greenish light pierced the canopy, revealing a floor alive with insects, small reptilian scavengers, and the lingering marks of something larger that had passed not long ago. The crucible was no ordinary jungle, it was a living arena, designed to strip prey of any illusion of safety. He carried nothing but a survival pack strapped to his back, a crude knife issued more as mockery than mercy, and a rationed tube of water. The tribunal had ensured his end would be witnessed, not fought. Yet he moved with measured precision, crouching low, scanning the undergrowth, marking the direction of the wind. His body carried the memory of Earth's battlefields, forests and ruins where ambushes were born from shadows. The jungle did not frighten him. It reminded him of home. High above, invisible to him, orbiting drones floated like carrion birds. Their lenses tracked his every motion, broadcasting his struggle to billions across the galaxy. 4 predators in the chamber and beyond, this was entertainment, proof of dominance. They expected panic, stumbling, flight. Instead, they found a soldier studying his environment as if it were a puzzle to be solved. Elias moved deeper into the undergrowth, noting the silence that settled as he advanced. A predator's silence. He crouched near a stream where prints marred the bank, massive paws with curved talons, heavier than any terrestrial beast. He touched the mark, his fingers pressing into the damp soil. The depth told him it carried weight, power, a creature that did not move lightly. The first glimpse of eyes came at dusk. They glowed faintly amber in the thickening shadows, low to the ground, unblinking. Elias did not raise his knife, nor did he shout. He stilled his breathing, watching the reflection until it blinked and vanished. The jungle rustled in its wake. He knew then that the hunt had begun in earnest. By nightfall, the crucible transformed. Insects sang, shrill and relentless. Shapes slithered across branches, wings fluttered in the black canopy. Elias crafted a fire with stripped bark and friction, smoke rising to mask his scent. He did not huddle near it but positioned himself offset, anticipating that the flames would draw predators. A shallow pit he had dug beside him was lined with sharpened stakes carved from fallen limbs. His traps were crude, but they were many. He did not wait long. The undergrowth parted, and from it emerged not one beast but several. A hunting pack, their bodies sinuous, scales glinting with wet sheen, jaws filled with serrated teeth. They circled, cautious of the flames, but not deterred. Their leader, larger than the rest, padded closer, growl vibrating the ground. Elias steadied his grip on the knife. He did not aim to win a battle. He aimed to survive long enough for the pack to doubt. The lead predator lunged. Elias shifted sideways, rolling across the dirt, knife flashing once across the creature's flank. Blood spattered, hot and metallic. The beast shrieked and reeled backward into the pit, the stakes piercing its belly. The pack howled in confusion, circling wider now, uncertain. Elias rose slowly, chest heaving, sweat streaking through the dust on his face. He kept his knife raised but his voice calm. They prowled closer, then froze. A deeper growl rippled through the clearing, one that silenced even their snarls. From the trees, something larger emerged, twice their size, mane bristling, body a blend of feline grace and lupin muscle. Its hide shimmered with natural armor, scarred from countless hunts. Its golden eyes locked onto Elias. It was not here for the fire or the pack. It had been watching him. The smaller predators slunk away, leaving their wounded behind. They did not challenge this creature's claim. Elias stood his ground as the beast stepped closer, its breath steaming in the firelight, the scent of iron and musk washing over him. His grip on the knife tightened, but he did not raise it. The predator lowered its head. Only then did Elias see the jagged spear lodged deep in its flank, the wound raw, edges inflamed. Not his trap. Not his doing. The tribunal had salted this arena with their own devices, cruel tools to hasten his demise. And yet, the apex predator, the ruler of this jungle, stood wounded before him. The drones hummed above, capturing every detail. Billions watched, expecting the human to flee or attack. But Elias did neither. Slowly, deliberately, he crouched and placed the knife on the ground between them. The predator's eyes narrowed, its muscles taut, but it did not strike. Elias moved closer, hands open. He studied the spear's entry, the shivering muscles around it. The wound would fester. Infection would kill even this colossus. Quietly he spoke words it could not understand, not for its ears but his own. You fight as I fight. You bleed as I bleed. Let's see if we can both walk away from this. He grasped the shaft, braced his foot and yanked. The predator roared, the sound shaking leaves loose from the canopy, but it did not lash out. It staggered, nearly collapsing, then steadied itself, breath ragged. Elias cast the bloodied weapon aside and pressed his hands to the wound, using torn strips of his uniform to bind it. His movements were efficient, soldier's work, treating the beast as he would a comrade in battle. The predator's breathing slowed. Its eyes, fierce and unrelenting, watched him with something beyond hunger. Caution. Calculation. In the firelight, its pupils widened, then narrowed again as though testing what manner of prey this was that tended instead of fled. High above, the tribunal's chamber erupted in disbelief. No one interfered, drones did not intervene, only observe. Billions of predators snarled and spat at their screens, mocking the futility of compassion. Yet those who knew the crucible best shifted uneasily. The jungle obeyed no prey. And yet the apex predator had not struck him down. Elias eased back, knife reclaimed, though he did not brandish it. He settled near the fire, his back to the beast, knowing that turning one's spine to a predator was either an act of supreme stupidity or of confidence that transcended fear. He listened to the beast's slow, heavy breathing until, to his quiet astonishment, it lowered itself to the earth nearby, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The night passed in uneasy silence. The jungle did not approach them. Predators that had circled withdrew into shadow, unwilling to trespass where the wounded apex lay beside the human. Drones circled, their lenses glowing like distant stars, bearing witness to the impossible. By dawn, Elias stirred from shallow sleep. His knife remained close, his senses alert. Yet he was alive, and so too was the beast. It rose slowly, testing its wound, a low growl resonating in its chest. Then, without warning, it stepped past him into the deeper jungle. It did not look back. Elias exhaled, uncertain if he had gained a reprieve or merely postponed the inevitable. Yet in his gut he knew something had shifted. The predator had chosen not to kill him. It had allowed him to live. And perhaps more importantly, it had allowed itself to be saved. The tribunal would not understand. They would call it chance, the fluke of a beast distracted by pain. But Elias felt the weight of the encounter press into his bones. Predators did not bow. They did not permit mercy. But last night, in the crucible's darkness, something primal had stirred. The jungle ahead waited, full of teeth and shadows. He tightened his pack and moved forward, every sense alive to the dangers stalking his path. Somewhere behind, faint in the distance, he thought he heard the echo of padded steps following. Whether ally, adversary, or something in between he could not yet know. But one truth had already taken root. In the eyes of the galaxy, humanity was prey. Yet in the eyes of the Crucible's apex predator, that judgment had already begun to fracture. The jungle was never still, never silent, a labyrinth of motion where every leaf concealed eyes and every sound carried the weight of intent. Elias moved through it with measured care, each step deliberate, senses sharpened by exhaustion and necessity. His uniform hung in tatters, sweat streaking the dirt that clung to his skin, but his gaze remained steady. He had not slept more than a handful of minutes since dawn, every pause haunted by the sensation of being watched. And though he walked alone, the certainty of unseen presence lingered like a shadow behind his shoulder. The predator he had spared had not vanished entirely. He glimpsed it in fragments, a ripple of golden fur in the undergrowth, the faint weight of padded steps muffled by moss, the glint of amber eyes in the gloom. It did not stalk him as prey. Nor did it walk beside him openly. It observed, circling, testing, as though weighing the man's place in this alien pack. Neither had spoken. Above, the drones continued their silent orbit, broadcasting each step to the Tribunal. Commentary crackled in unseen chambers across the galaxy, voices mocking the human's stubborn march, others muttering uneasily about the predator's strange tolerance. The Crucible was meant to devour intruders, yet the man still lived, and worse, he lived with the shadow of its sovereign trailing him. The test came at twilight. The jungle grew restless, smaller creatures fleeing ahead of an approaching pack. Elias heard them before he saw them. Guttural hisses, claws raking bark, the coordinated rustle of bodies moving in practiced formation. 6 hunters, reptilian and lean, their hides dappled to vanish into the half-light. They were not curious scavengers. They were killers, disciplined, circling him with the patience of professionals. Elias knew their kind. Not by name, not by species catalogued in some alien archive, but by instinct. They were wolves of another world, designed by evolution for the pack hunt. Alone he might have driven one back with fire or cunning. 6 together meant certain death. His grip tightened on the crude spear he had carved from hardwood, its tip hardened in flame. They closed in. Yellow eyes gleamed from every direction, their bodies low, tails twitching. The leader hissed and the pack moved as one. Elias braced, his stance wide, every muscle coiled for the strike. The first leapt, a blur of teeth and scales, jaws snapping for his throat. Elias pivoted, driving the spear upward, the impact jarring his arms as the creature shrieked, impaled but not yet dead. The force ripped the weapon from his hands as the body writhed, and the rest surged forward. Claws raked across his chest, tearing fabric, grazing flesh. He staggered but caught another by the jaw, driving his knife into the soft tissue beneath its throat. Hot blood spilled across his hands. Pain flared in his side as a third beast's talons found flesh, dragging him down. He slammed an elbow into its skull, desperate, teeth bared not in fear but defiance. The jungle erupted into chaos, shrieks, snapping bones, Elias's hoarse breath. And then the ground shook. A roar, deeper than thunder, ripped through the clearing. The pack froze as the golden beast burst from the shadows, its mane bristling, eyes burning like molten metal. It collided with the nearest predator, jaws snapping the creature's spine in one brutal strike. The others turned too late. It was carnage, claws flashing, bodies flung like ragdolls, the apex predator tearing through the pack with a ferocity that eclipsed all doubt of its dominion. Elias scrambled to his feet, knife still in hand, blood soaking his side. Another hunter lunged for him, only to be caught midair by the beast's sweeping strike. The predator did not shield him from danger by chance. It fought as if protecting a den mate, carving a circle of death around him. Elias, instead of retreating, seized a burning branch from the fire he had sparked earlier and drove it into the flank of a closing hunter. The flames caught, the beast shrieked, and together man and monster turned the tide. The last of the pack broke and fled into the dark. Silence returned, broken only by the ragged breaths of man and beast. The golden predator stood heaving, its maw slick with blood, its body trembling not from weakness but from the aftermath of violence. Elias leaned against a tree, his chest heaving, every nerve aflame with adrenaline. The predator's gaze fell upon him. For a moment, the distance between them held every possibility: ally, adversary, executioner. Elias did not raise his knife. Slowly, painfully, he straightened, standing tall despite the blood dripping down his side. His hand did not tremble as he extended it, palm open, fingers steady. The beast's ears flattened, its head lowering inch by inch until its massive skull pressed against his chest. Its weight forced him back a step, but Elias held his ground. The contact was not a strike. It was acknowledgement. Submission. In orbit, the tribunal's chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates roared in disbelief, some shrieking that the footage was false, others howling that such a bond was impossible. Yet the image was undeniable. The apex predator of the Crucible, the unchallenged ruler of its domain, had bowed its head to a human. Kalandras, watching from his tier, felt his breath catch. He had studied countless moments in history where power shifted, but none so profound as this. Humanity had been named prey, and yet the king of predators had chosen otherwise. What did that make Elias Vare? The predator pulled back, its eyes glowing like twin suns in the gloom. Elias placed a blood-stained hand against its mane, steady despite the sting of his wounds. He said nothing, but his silence carried weight greater than any speech. In that silence, the jungle seemed to still, as if recognizing a new order. Night drew near again, and with it the certainty that the Crucible would not relent. More predators would come. More trials waited in the dark. Elias bound his wounds with strips of cloth, his movements slow but deliberate, while the golden beast settled at the edge of the firelight, its body a living wall between him and the shadows. The tribunal's drones circled, capturing every breath, every flicker of flame, every moment of shared vigilance between human and beast. Billions of eyes watched, but none could alter the truth unfolding before them. A line had been crossed. A bond had been forged. And no decree of prey or predator could undo what the Crucible itself had witnessed. Elias lay against the tree trunk, exhaustion tugging at his body, yet sleep remained distant. He studied the predator's breathing, the rise and fall of its chest, the scars that crisscrossed its hide. It was not tame. It was not broken. It was whole, dangerous, and sovereign. Yet it had chosen to remain by him. In that choice, Elias felt the stirrings of something larger than survival. This was no longer merely about defying death in a hostile jungle. This was about rewriting what it meant to stand before predators, what it meant to endure. Humanity's strength had always been to turn weakness into advantage, to find allies in unlikely places, to outlast what should have destroyed them. Now, before the eyes of the galaxy, that truth had taken form in blood and fire. As the fire dwindled to embers, Elias allowed his eyes to close for a moment, trusting not the jungle, not the drones, but the golden beast that lay watching in the dark. For the first time since his exile, he permitted himself the faintest trace of a smile. The Crucible had sought to make him prey. Instead, it had given him an ally. And with that alliance, the balance of power had begun to tilt. When dawn came, it would bring new dangers, new hunts, new trials. But Elias knew one thing with unshakable certainty. He no longer walked the Crucible alone. The tribunal chamber had been built to dwarf the will of those who entered it, a cathedral of power where countless trials ended in submission. Now it trembled with noise as the footage from the Crucible played across towering holoscreens. Billions of eyes across the galaxy watched in disbelief as the apex predator lowered its head to a man who had been condemned as prey. Delegates shouted over one another, claws clashing against railings, mandibles clicking in fury. Some demanded the broadcast be cut, others insisted on proof that the footage had not been manipulated. For all their outrage, none could unsee the truth. The predator had chosen the human. Kalandras sat among the scholars, his hands clasped so tightly his scaled knuckles paled. His mind raced with the weight of history being rewritten before his eyes. He had known from the beginning that Elias Vare was unlike the broken prey paraded before the tribunal in past ages, but he had not foreseen this. The Crucible was merciless. Predators never bent the knee. And yet one had. Kalan realized with a chill that the chamber was not roaring because it dismissed the sight. It was roaring because every predator in attendance feared what it meant. The tribunal summoned Elias back from exile, not as a courtesy but as a necessity. They needed to control the narrative, to smother the spark before it grew into fire. His transport landed in the docking bay beneath the chamber, and for the first time in days, he stepped beyond the oppressive canopy of the Crucible. His body carried new scars, his uniform was shredded, but his posture remained steady. Every stride was deliberate, the stride of a man who had survived what was meant to kill him. But he did not walk alone. A ripple of panic tore through the bay as the golden predator emerged behind him, silent, massive, its amber eyes scanning the alien guards who stumbled back despite their weapons. It had followed him through fire, through death, and now it followed him into the heart of civilization itself. No cage or chain bound it. No handler guided it. It walked at Elias's side because it chose to. That choice silenced the tribunal more effectively than any decree could. Elias entered the chamber to a storm of disbelief. Delegates hissed, shouted, some rose in open protest. The speaker pounded the floor with his staff, demanding order, but order was already lost. The predator padded behind Elias, every step a challenge to the hierarchy of the galaxy. The guards made no move to intercept. None dared. Explain this, the speaker demanded, his mandibles flaring wide, his voice nearly drowned by the cacophony. What trick have you employed? What parasite controls that beast? No prey commands predator. Elias's voice carried, not through volume but through precision. I commanded nothing. I fought. I bled. I endured. And when death came for me I did not bow. This beast is no thrall. It is no puppet. It is sovereign as am I. It chose as I chose. The chamber howled in fury. Some predators spat their contempt, others shouted for the tribunal to kill them both on the spot. Kalen's eyes widened as he saw fear hidden in their rage. Predators lived by certainty. The certainty of their dominance, the certainty of their strength. Yet the crucible had birthed an image they could not reconcile, a predator who bowed its head not to a stronger beast, but to one who should have been beneath it. The speaker leaned forward, his mandibles snapping shut in cold anger. You mistake anomaly for truth. One beast does not change the order of the galaxy. Humanity is prey. That was decreed. That remains fact, the predator growled, a sound so deep the chamber floor seemed to vibrate. Its teeth bared, its mane bristling, the force of its presence silenced even the boldest delegates. The speaker faltered mid-sentence, his authority shattered not by argument, but by instinctive fear. Elias placed a hand upon the beast's neck, steadying it with calm certainty. His eyes swept the chamber, meeting the gaze of predators who had laughed as they condemned him. His words cut with the precision of a blade. You claim prey cannot endure. Yet I endured your crucible. You claim prey cannot fight. Yet I fought and your hunters fled from me. You claim prey cannot command. But look before you. If this is prey, then what is predator? The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was the stunned quiet of an order cracking under its own weight. Kalen's pulse quickened. The moment was more than spectacle. It was revolution. One delegate, reptilian and draped in ceremonial armor, surged to his feet, refusing to yield. This is heresy. This man is no predator. He is an insult to the bloodline of hunters. I challenge him here before the tribunal. Let the galaxy see him die as he should have in the crucible. The chamber roared approval at the chance of blood. The predator tensed, muscles coiling, but Elias raised his hand once more, stepping forward to meet the challenger with no hesitation. His knife was still at his belt, its blade dulled and scarred from use. Against the alien's ceremonial blade, it looked pitiful. But Elias did not look at the weapons. He looked at the alien as though through him, as though he were already gone. The duel was swift. The alien struck with speed born of arrogance, his blade slashing down in a killing arc. Elias sidestepped, his movements honed by survival, not ceremony. He closed the distance, his knife flashing once, finding the gap in the alien's armor. The predator staggered, eyes wide, blood darkening the floor. The chamber erupted in chaos, but Elias did not gloat. He did not roar victory. He simply withdrew the blade and stepped back, steady, unshaken. The challenger collapsed lifeless. The predator at Elias's side released a low rumble, a sound of finality. The chamber that had condemned him now stared at him as though seeing humanity for the first time. Kalen rose slowly from his tier, voice carrying above the din. The tribunal declared this man prey. Yet he survived what no predator could. The apex of the crucible bent its will to him. And now he has stood against your champion and prevailed. If this is prey, then what word remains for the rest of us? The chamber fractured. Some delegates shouted for Elias to be executed as an abomination. Others fell silent, their instincts betraying them, recognizing a truth their words could not deny. The speaker for the first time hesitated. The certainty of his decree dissolved under the weight of what stood before him. A man, bloodied but unbowed, with the beast of the crucible at his side. Elias spoke once more, his voice calm yet sharp as iron. You may keep your titles, your decrees, your mockery. Humanity does not need your permission to endure. You named us prey. But the crucible, the very world you chose to break me, has already given its answer. The predator growled again, its head lowering beside Elias in silent acknowledgement. The image was burned into the minds of all who watched. Man and beast, bound not by domination but by choice. The speaker slammed his staff, the sound hollow now, a futile attempt at control. Enough. The tribunal will deliberate. But it was too late. Across the galaxy the people had already seen enough. The broadcast had carried more weight than any decree could. They had seen prey walk into the crucible and return not only alive, but with the allegiance of its king. The story had already been written, and it would not be unwritten. Kalen watched as Elias turned, hands still resting against the predator's mane, eyes unflinching. He knew, as did everyone in that chamber, that history had shifted. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been redefined not by decree, but by proof carved in blood. The tribunal had declared him prey. But the apex predator had already called him alpha. The galactic chamber was silent except for the steady hum of the suspended energy fields, each one glowing faintly as if restraining the power of 1,000 suns. At the heart of the tribunal stood Kale, his posture neither submissive nor aggressive, but balanced, like a predator biding its time. Beside him, the apex predator crouched low, its emerald eyes burning with intensity, scanning the rows of alien dignitaries as though each were nothing more than potential prey. Kale felt the weight of their stares pressing on him. Entire civilizations sat in judgment, their voices once united in mockery of his species, now held captive by the tension that radiated from the bond between man and beast. A human declared prey by galactic decree, standing shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's deadliest predator. It was a sight that unbalanced the scales of their arrogance. The Arbiter's voice cut through the silence, cold and metallic. Kale of Earth, you stand accused of upsetting the natural order. You have bound what cannot be bound. You have claimed what cannot be claimed. Do you deny that you are prey? Kale's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. If I were prey, he said slowly, I would not be standing here. His hand rested lightly against the predator's scaled hide, and the beast let out a low growl that reverberated through the chamber like thunder caught in a bottle. Your tribunal declared me prey, yet your apex predator calls me alpha. Which judgment should the galaxy believe? Murmurs rippled through the chamber, alien tongues hissing, clicking, and rumbling in disbelief. For the first time, the tribunal itself faltered. Centuries of law, etched into stone and void alike, had never accounted for this. The Arbiter's eyes narrowed, its crystalline pupils refracting light into jagged shards. Your defiance is irrelevant. The bond you forged is a threat to galactic stability. You have corrupted the apex predator, twisted its nature to your advantage. Such contamination cannot be tolerated. The predator snarled, the spines along its back bristling as it lowered its head toward the Arbiter, a gesture that carried far more menace than any weapon. Kale, however, did not flinch. Instead, he spoke with calm certainty. I didn't corrupt it. I didn't tame it. I earned its respect. His gaze swept the hall, locking with each alien leader in turn. You call yourselves civilizations, guardians of order. Yet your laws are built on arrogance. The belief that you understand dominance, hierarchy, survival. You don't. You never fought tooth and claw in a frozen forest with death breathing down your neck. You never stared into the eyes of something stronger than you and lived, not by running but by refusing to kneel. The predator let out a low, guttural sound that echoed Kale's words with raw menace. On Earth, Kale continued, his voice rising, we learned something simple. The deadliest creatures don't bow to those who scream the loudest. They bow to those who stand firm no matter the odds. And that is why your judgment of prey or predator is meaningless to me. The chamber shook, not from any machine or structure but from the predator itself. It reared to its full height, towering above every being in the room, its body coiled like a storm about to break. The aliens recoiled instinctively. Even the Arbiter's mask of composure cracked, its crystalline body trembling faintly as the predator's gaze burned into it. Kale placed a hand against its flank. The movement was small, almost casual, but it held power, because the predator responded instantly, lowering its head in deference. The beast that had slaughtered fleets and toppled empires now bent to a single human touch. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted, some in fury, others in fear, while a few simply gaped at the impossible sight before them. In their minds, everything they had built, their hierarchy of predator and prey, the laws they thought immutable, fractured. The arbiter slammed a crystalline fist against its dais. Enough. Its voice cracked like breaking stone. This tribunal is not swayed by theatrics. The human is a disruption to balance. Both he and his beast must be eliminated. Kale's jaw tightened. He had expected this, but the words still settled like lead in his chest. Elimination. Not just for him, but for the predator that had chosen him. And then, in the midst of the uproar, the predator moved. Faster than sight, faster than thought, it lunged forward, not to kill but to block. Its massive body interposed itself between Kale and the arbiter's energy field. The beast's muscles coiled with enough force to shatter the chamber's floor. The growl that followed shook dust from the high ceilings. Do you see? Kale's voice cut through the noise, sharp and resolute. You can decree, you can threaten, you can condemn, but the galaxy's deadliest predator has already chosen. You can't unmake that choice. The arbiter faltered, its crystalline form flickering under the weight of doubt. Around the chamber, alien leaders whispered in tones that carried both fear and awe. For the first time, the tribunal faced not a petitioner, not a criminal, but a rival authority, a man who stood at the center of a bond that defied all understanding. The silence stretched, brittle as glass. Then Kale stepped forward, the predator moving with him in perfect synchronization. His voice was low but unwavering. So I ask you, what's stronger? Your laws carved in stone, or the will of a predator that has never bowed to anyone until now? The predator's eyes gleamed as it bent its head once more to Kale, the gesture deliberate, undeniable. In that instant, the hierarchy the tribunal had built for eons cracked apart. The galaxy's apex predator had declared its alpha, and it was human. The arbiter's voice rose, desperate now. This cannot be allowed. Kale's answer was simple, his tone carrying the weight of finality. It already is. The predator let out a roar so powerful that the chamber walls quaked, the sound rolling through the hall like the declaration of a new era. Alien leaders covered their ears, some collapsing to their knees. Others stared in horrified recognition of what it meant. The predator was no longer theirs to fear, to weaponize, or to command. Its loyalty belonged to Kale alone. And in that moment, the human who had been declared prey stood taller than any predator in the galaxy. The arbiter, pale light flickering weakly from its fractured body, spoke one last time, its voice tinged with something dangerously close to dread. You've rewritten the order, Kale of Earth. The galaxy will never be the same. Kale's eyes met its crystalline gaze, steady and unrelenting. Good, he said, his voice calm in the wake of the predator's thunderous roar. It's about time. The chamber lay in silence, save for the predator's rumbling breath. The tribunal, once unshakable, now trembled before a man and the beast that had named him Alpha. The climax did not end in bloodshed, nor in submission, but in something far greater, the collapse of an empire of arrogance, and the rise of a truth no law could erase. Humanity was never prey.